How would it feel to have a thriving fitness business and have the freedom to enjoy life at the fullest? Well, that is exactly what the Trainer Revenue Multiplier Show is going to give you. My name is Mathew Park. This is Jaime Filer.
Hey guys.
And we are here to serve.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Trainer Revenue Multiplier Show. As always, I'm your host, Jaime Filer, and today I have the pleasure of, I was going to say interviewing, but he just told me he wanted to ramble and chat. So I have the pleasure of having a conversation with the TRM systems engineer, Laurent DeCarie. How are you, sir?
Jaime, I'm doing phenomenal. I'm actually feeling so blessed and so grateful to be on the podcast with you. And absolutely want to hit home some important points, but also, when you have the chance to have a great conversation with Jaime Filer, it's always an honor. It's always a pleasure. So looking forward to it.
Thank you. So before we go into systems and immediately start giving people actionable steps that they can take in their business, let's talk about how and why you got away from your previous business known as Mental Fit, if I recall, and transition more towards helping trainers with the tech side of things.
That's a great question. So let's go back to when I first joined TRM, right? Because that's really when it started. I joined TRM about 3 years ago as as what I believed was to be a thriving trainer. I thought I was doing, pretty good. I was, making about 6 to 8K per month, doing personal training, was starting to have a little team of coaches and so on. And, but I had a point where I was really getting burnt out, right? I was just doing so much. It was just nonstop. I could feel it just, my RAM level was 100% all the time. And there was just no sign of slowing down. And to me, it's like, if I wanted to keep scaling that business even more, I'd have to do more every single day. So I joined TRM because I was starting to feel that pressure starting, and I needed some help, right? I just literally needed help. So I reached out to Mathew, had met him before at a couple of events in Montreal, and decided to reach out to him and learn more about his program. And, on one of our first coaching calls, Mathew helped me really map out the business. He was like, "Hey, Laurent, it's cool. Like, you have all of this inside your head, right? But why don't we go ahead and map it out?" So the first thing we did was map out my onboarding sequence. And I was like, "Oh my God, what is that?" And he said, "Laurent, your onboarding sequence is basically everything that happens once your client says yes. What are the magic touch points you're going to lead your clients into? What does your client experience look like from, one step to another once the client says yes?" And from then on, I was like amazed. I was like, "Oh my God, I had never heard about onboarding. And now here I am, being taught by the professional about it." And that just clicked together. And so over time, I just became obsessed with building systems, finding various apps to, fulfill the clients faster, help them, just lead them through a nice streamlined experience, and just mapping out different systems. And obviously, a lot of trainers need help with systems, and they're not all tech savvy. I'm a bit nerdy. I used to be a gamer, and now I was a trainer, so it just made sense for me to combine both of them and start helping other trainers who are less tech savvy by helping them build their systems. And slowly but surely got integrated more and more within TRM, within the community. And now here I am. I've decided to literally go full time and help the trainers build their systems. And what an honor it has been and still is up to this date.
Oh my God, I love the smile on your face talking about it. You are truly a nerd, and I mean that in the most complimentary way. So when you get a trainer from TRM, from whatever ecosystem, where do you start with them as it relates to their systems?
Great question. So obviously I always start with them where they're at, right? So wherever you go, there you are. And whenever they meet me, they're at a specific point in their business. Most of them are at a point where they're starting to gain traction, right? They're starting to gain momentum. They're starting to gain leads. They're starting to make sales. They have a little roster of clients, or sometimes even a big roster of clients. And they get to that point where they 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 don't know how to sustain the growth anymore. You remember when I was relating to my story? I was scaling very fast. I was going very fast, but I had no way to sustain the growth, right? So
Right.
that's mostly when I come in. It's like, okay, awesome. Now you got all those leads, you got all that traffic. You're starting to build your database. Now let's organize it, right? So it's cool that you got that cash flow now, but what are you going to do with the data, right? So cash flow in business is king, but the data really is queen. So what I do is I help them then structure their database. And the way I do this is we start by mapping out their entire process, and we identify exactly how we're going to handle their leads. And and the first thing we do is we map out their business, right? Let's take a 40 feet bird's eye view of your business, and let's actually look at every single piece of it. And like Matthew did in the first time, with me, well, let's just map it out, take a bird's eye view, disconnect from the business
Yeah.
and just look over it. I feel a lot of trainers that come to me, they are their business, right? But when you're building a business, you actually want to have this separate entity, that and disconnected from you, and actually look at it like it's a vehicle, right? And
Yep.
then once you disconnect from it, and you remove yourself from that frame where you are the business and you need to shoulder everything, and you actually have this little vehicle that you can just maneuver, right?
Yep.
Then it creates space, and then it creates clarity, and it removes a lot of pressure, and then you could just identify all those little steps that you need to funnel your clients into. That is going to remove that weight even more off of your shoulders over time. So
So
yeah.
let's talk about the biggest bottleneck where you see trainers get stuck. Is it onboarding? Is it payment? Is it lead gen? Is it client management?
Great question. I believe it first starts with the mindset. I don't think what I notice is a lot of systems are really two things. Obviously, it's the tech stuff, it's the apps you're going to use, and so on. But it's also a mindset, right? So, so when it comes to developing a systems mindset, what you want to do is that's it. You want to gain clarity on what every step of the way is going to look like. So, for example, your client comes in, right? You make your offer, you hop on a sales call with the client, and the client says yes. Like, what is it that you're going to do, right? You need to know exactly what you're going to do from the moment that client says yes. Just like, for example, you would go inside a fast food restaurant, you would order, I don't know, combo number 8. Well, the team in the back already knows what to do, right? They're going to say yes. Okay, first thing, get the payment. Second thing, have the client sign an agreement so that they are protected, you are protected. Next thing, awesome. Now that they made their payment, they signed the agreement, send them the welcome package. Like, you want to have every step of the way be very detailed, and you want to know them by heart. It's like, okay, client says yes, snap of a finger, I know exactly what to do. And if you have apps and systems supporting that, then it makes it a lot easier. For example, if in a single drag and drop motion in a pipeline, you can fire off automations and like send out emails on your behalf, right?
Yeah.
And that makes your life tremendously easier, right?
Sure.
And so that bottleneck would really be that, well, a lot of trainers don't know necessarily what they're doing, or they haven't been properly introduced to systems. So you don't know what you don't know, and that's fine.
Right.
And you're going to run into that bottleneck, especially if you're only focusing on leads and not on how to sustain them. So gaining clarity on that definitely helps solve that bottleneck.
I think that's a really good point. And, the first thing you said was, okay, so your client came in, you had the sales call, you have to take payment. But correct me if I'm wrong, there are systems even before you have onboarded a client. There's a system for creating your content pillars on social media, right? The engine has started to help people with that content mapping. Then we have a system for calendar so that you and I don't have to go back and forth. Tuesday at 11:30, I can't do Tuesday. Can you do Wednesday? I can't do Wednesday morning. I can do afternoon, right? So talk to me about the first system, Laurent, through client fulfillment system.
Oh, I love it. So those are what I call the three main systems in your business. So there are, three main systems that you're going to need in your
Yeah.
trainer business. The first one is you're going to need a marketing system. How are you going to engage your audience? Who is your client avatar, right? We help that define that in TRM 10K. And um, and basically, how are you going to get those leads? How are you going to spark an interest in those leads? And what is it exactly that you're going to call them to do so that they start interacting with you?
Right.
So a good example would be, I'm a trainer. I help men between 25 and 40, get rid of their beer belly, for example, and get in
Okay.
shape. Quit drinking or just reduce the amount that they drink and so on. So I have a really clear avatar, and my call to action is, say for example, I post a success story of one of my clients, then I'm going to then invite with a call to action, hey, if if you're a man between 25 40 and you want to burn that beer belly fat, then go ahead and book a call with me, right?
Yep.
So people may go to your link in bio, click on your calendar and book a call with you, but they may also just spark a conversation. Um, so that's a part of the marketing system, is how are you going to spark interest in your clients, right? So have clear call to actions, know who your target avatar is, know your seed language, and then that marketing system leads into a sales system, right? How are you going to convert? How are you going to bring that client to say yes to your offer, right? And then you can have multiple items in that. So a good one would be an appointment setter funnel, where it's first, hey, why don't you go ahead and fill out this form for me and then book a call at your best date and time with me. So then if you have this tool, then no matter from where your clients come as far as marketing, whether it's referrals, whether it's your social media, whether it's email marketing, you have a clear call to action. Awesome. Your first mission is to book a call with me, fill out the form, book a call. The client then, or the lead rather, then qualifies, and that enhances your chances of having them say yes, right? So
Yep.
those sales systems are very focused on getting your client to say yes. And then the third one is the onboarding system. Once the client says yes, what are you going to do? So it's really to keep that bird's eye view. Marketing, how are you going to spark interest? Sales, how are you going to get that person to say yes to your offer? And then once that person says yes, onboarding, what's going to happen once that person says yes?
Wow. Okay. So guys, that was already so gold. So gold. So Laurent, tell me, let's say someone doesn't necessarily trust you yet. Don't know who, this is the first time they've ever heard a podcast with you. They're like, wow, he's super knowledgeable, but I don't know who the hell he is. Before they hire you, what is something that, or even top 3 tips a trainer can start doing today that will get the ball of systems rolling before they hire a professional like yourself to take over for them?
Right. So that's a great question. So obviously, when you say I'm a professional, so if if you're listening to that podcast and you don't know me, so obviously I have very strong systems oriented mindset, but I also have the tech skills to back them up. So I can create for you database management app. Like there's a lot of technical stuff that I can do that I don't want to dive into right now. So the first 3 things, for a trainer, if you just want to start evolving that systems mindset, working on your own systems before, going to someone else. I always like when people actually do a bit of work on their systems and they have actual bottlenecks before coming to me. That shows that, they did some digging and they're really like, oh no, I can't do it. So that little homework that I would give you if you're listening to that before even coming to see me is try mapping out your business, right? Try getting that bird's eye view. And it's like, okay, as far as marketing, what are the current tools that I have now, right?
Mm-hmm.
What am I focusing on? Social media? Okay, cool. Do I do some, do I do some podcasts? What is it that you're doing right now? Just try to identify those main core pieces, right? So say, and then I'm going to invite you to even go a layer deeper as far as social media. What is it exactly that you do? What is it exactly that you're going to post about? Do you have consistency? Try to map them out even further. That's for marketing. As far as sales, what do you have? Do you have sales scripts that you follow, right? Do you have an appointment setter funnel? How do you book your appointments? That's crucial for sales. Are you getting your leads to fill out a form where they give you all their information even before hopping on the call with you? Do you have something like that? What kind of apps do you have? Do you book them manually? That's all things that you need to identify, first, right, for yourself. And then as far as onboarding, what are you going to do when your client actually says yes? And heck, even going back to sales, what are you going to do if the client says no? If the client's like backing off, if the client's thinking about it, maybe you tiptoed in your sales presentation, you didn't knock it out of the park. When we hop on sales calls as coaches, sometimes we knock it out of the park. We head off the call and we're like, oh my God, close, like that was great. I did very good. But sometimes, you didn't crush it. So client, comes out, is in thinking about it mode. What's going to happen then? Anyways, I'm drifting off a bit just because that's how my brain works. But yeah, just make sure to map out marketing, make sure to map out sales, and make sure to map out onboarding, and try to optimize it. See what areas you want to optimize. That's really the first step, is defining, right?
So I love that.
I would start with that. Yeah.
So in terms of actionable steps, because I want to try and bring what you said into something they can take away. We're going to do Laurent, we're going to do Jaime. So in terms of marketing, your suggestion was to do content mapping, right? That would be a good first step. What are you going to post on social media? How are you going to navigate your calls to action? My step for marketing, especially on social media, would be come up with quick replies. On Instagram, this is a function you can use so you don't have to keep typing out the same thing all the time. If someone says, hey, I saw you were a trainer, what does that mean? Or what does that do? And then you have a quick reply. Or if someone says, absolutely, I'm interested, what's the next step? Instead of saying, well, what's your schedule like on Tuesday? You say, here's a link to my job form as an appointment setter, right? Then we talked about,
exactly.
So for sales, your suggestion was have an appointment setter. My suggestion for sales was, you also mentioned it, have a script. The last thing we want is to repeat ourselves in a sales call, sound unclear, uncertain, unsure of exactly what we're going to be presenting, and say, I lost that sale. That was all me. I had them and then I lost them. And then in terms of onboarding, your suggestion was mapping it out. I would say write templates, because the last thing you want is for your marketing to go really well, which led to amazing sales. And now you have to create 15 different plans in one weekend, each of them customized. You got to start with templates.
Absolutely. Having templates, or yeah, definitely. Or having a training app maybe that you use, and having templates inside that training app. Trainerize is a good one. You can create templates inside of it. So yeah, that's definitely a good one. Yeah, for sure.
What have you noticed as the biggest difference, psychologically, financially, impact that you have given the trainers of TRM in working with them on the TRM engine?
Absolutely. So, well, the main difference is, first off, you remember when I was saying, like, they now have this vehicle for their business. Well, that's the first thing it does, right? It removes pressure off of their shoulders and leans that pressure onto the engine itself. And by doing that, it removes stress, but also it frees up some time. So imagine you don't have to send a welcome email yourself anymore. How much time would you save, right? Maybe, honestly, maybe like 10 minutes, just from copy pasting and changing the name and so on. But stacking those 10 minutes over time is massive, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. What was the biggest change to your own life once you started using more systems?
I started having a lot of fun. That's for sure. I'm really into, because when I do it for myself, I'm really into it, deeper automations, more complex automations. I'm into bookkeeping and so on. But definitely a lot less stress. A system is like an employee that's always going to be here, that's always going to be, reliable, as long as everything is turned on and works well. And, it's just so nice, that feeling to know that with only a couple of clicks, your clients can be taken care of. And, even you can be taken care of in that regards. If you have a system that's onboarding you, the system is always going to be available, working, you know,
Yeah.
whereas you may be burnt out and tired and just can't do it, right? So
Yeah.
if you have everything like, if you have apps that are, for example, the TRM engine, where you have this pipeline and you could just drag and drop your clients through your, you know, business development process step by step and know where they are every step of the way, then you can make sure that your clients are taken care of, right? And that's really what it's about. You want, and yeah, that's the way, we're talking about me and my systems, but that's really the way I feel. It's like, okay, I know where this person is. It removes so much stress off of me, because I know that, I know that it doesn't depend on me necessarily, and that I'm actually supported with that system.
Sure. Sure. So I read a quote in prepping for this particular podcast that said, systems and processes have a significant role in building a company. Systems are what make businesses grow, flow, endure, and sell. Do you have anything to add to that you can say about if this podcast alone hasn't even just sparked an interest in you starting to automate something in your business? What can we say, Laurent?
Systems in your business are the framework, are the reference for you, your team, and your clients, right? It is the one thing that you guys are all going to refer to that is going to make all of your business experience that much better. That's really what I would add to that.
And I can tell you, in working with Laurent, guys, and so many other trainers, I hear the same thing. He said he's just happier and he has more fun. I have more time freedom, and my clients don't suffer as a result. Whether I'm in Phoenix, Mexico, Toronto, Tampa, my clients still get the same quality of service, and essentially my business doesn't skip a beat. Awesome.
Absolutely. Yep. And yep. With little finishing words, I think you really hit it on the nail. It's instead of always thinking like, oh, what do I need to do? Oh my God, Lisa, what did she need? Oh my God, Taylor, what did he need? Oh my God, then just brain dumping everything and just having those systems in place just removes a lot of shame of not taking action at the proper time, or falling off track, or having clients fall through leaks in your systems. So yeah, having those systems in place is massive, especially if you already have traction. So say you're listening to this and you already have traction in your business, you're generating leads and so on, you're doing well on that end, but you need to sustain that growth and actually have some pillars that are going to sustain the growth. Then yeah, that's definitely a must.
Mathew Park loves your comment. Cash flow is king and data is queen. Love it. Love it. Laurent, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your energy on today's podcast. We definitely appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Pleasure is ours. Guys, if you liked what you heard today, please share it on your Instagram, your Facebook, wherever. Don't forget to rate us, leave us a review. We definitely appreciate it. And if you can, make sure you subscribe so you do not miss an wisdom-filled episode, an info-packed episode. Subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate it. And until next time, take care of yourselves and get some systems. Laurent.